warm welcome to Business Today Television India Today Group. It is my great pleasure to be joined by the man who's leading India's largest airline, IndiGo Airlines, which is also one of the world's most valuable airlines by market capitalization. Joining me is the Chief Executive Officer of the airline, Mr. Pieter Elbers. Pieter, thank you for being with us on this show.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
And I'm also, I take pleasure in inviting and having my colleague with me, Richa Sharma, on this show, where we are going to speak to Pieter about a lot of things evolving with the airline. Pieter, I'm going to begin by asking you, it's been 18 years, over 18 years for IndiGo, and you've been at the helm for about close to 2.5 years. You entered the airline at a time when the airline was struggling with the COVID shackles and challenges, just like as the sector was. How were these 2.5 years in driving IndiGo's dominant position in the country?
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me here. You know, it has been a very, I would say, exciting past 2.5 years, very vibrant and very dynamic. When I moved to India and I joined IndiGo back in August of 22, the country was kind of emerging from the COVID situation, and so was the aviation industry. So every week the numbers were sort of going up, and I think at IndiGo we've done a very good job in making sure that we had the capacity available to accommodate that demand. So we've been thriving really over the past 2.5 years, and the fact that we welcomed last year 113 million customers in a single year, I guess that underlines the enormous surge of air travel post-COVID.
Pieter, we would like to know what next. You've explained about last 2.5 years. What next? Let's say next 10 years or next 5 years. What's there for IndiGo? What we can look up to?
Yeah, you know, the strategy and the philosophy really was, after COVID, we need to get back on our feet, operationally, financially, and in terms of customer experience. So those were the three priorities when I joined back in 22: financial, operational, and customer experience. So that was important. We had the losses of COVID. We were a net worth negative company. The customer experience with the masks and all the COVID problems. I mean, now no one thinks about it anymore, but remember how it was back then. So those were the key priorities: on-time performance, get it back. And that basically was all done. The next step really is to make sure that by 2030, IndiGo is becoming a global aviation giant, not only an Indian domestic giant, but operating on the global scale. And I would say very much hand in hand with the growth of India, it's the growth of IndiGo. If India becomes the third largest economy in the world by 27, the country deserves to have airlines matching the size and the scale and the opportunity the country is reflecting. And IndiGo is very much determined to be one of those airlines reflecting that growth of India itself.
Great. Pieter, that's quite a trajectory you've mentioned. You started by saying that initially there were challenges with COVID, but then you had to re-strategize everything. And what a journey it has been in 2 years. Look at the kind of announcement that you have made, the fleet expansion plan that you have recently announced, and of course, introduction of stretch and loyalty program, all after 18 years. Why this move now?
These are all building blocks towards what we want to achieve in 2030. And so if you look at the decisions over the past 2.5 years, first we did a massive fleet order of 500 aircraft, the largest single aircraft type order ever made in the world. And that's done by IndiGo. And today we have an order book of like 900 planes yet to be delivered. So that was the first building block. The second building block was making sure that we cater for the aspirational India. And the aspirational India needs to also to have a proper business class proposition. That's why we felt on the nation's busiest and business routes, the business class was there. With the other change of India, by people taking more and more flights, that's where the loyalty program comes in. And I would say lastly, part of that is the internationalization. You know, for a very long time, a lot of Indian international air travel was connecting to places just outside the geographical scope of India. I think with the growth we are doing, and actually as recent as last weekend, we started our 38th international destination, Medina, out of Hyderabad. We really embark on the journey of that internationalization. So these are all building blocks to make sure that when it's 2030, IndiGo is one of the global aviation giants.
Wonderful. You've mentioned that how your growth story is like, but where do you think the focus will be domestic or international for future expansion plans for IndiGo?
Well, I would say both. Domestic is the very foundation of what we have. I mean, India's home, and India is the very basis of what we do. So today we operate to 90 and soon 91 domestic destinations. Think about that. 87% of the Indian population lives within 100 kilometers of an IndiGo served airport. You think about that. 87% Indian population within 100 kilometers. And we can discuss whether 100 kilometers, 2-hour drive or 3-hour drive, it doesn't matter. It's just, that's the distance. So that's a very important factor. But when we look to the number of routes, we still have a huge opportunity to start building the domestic network. It's still largely underserved, looking at the population and the economy. So that's going to remains the very foundation of who we are and what we do. But alongside with that, the international scope, where we have the opportunity to add a lot of new destinations and even further destinations, it will have a larger growth percentage. But the majority of our available seat kilometers, of course, is still going to be domestic. Today, that's around 30%. Used to be around 15, now it's 30, so it just doubled in terms of size. And we have quite a lot of success stories recently. Baku, Almaty, Tbilisi, Tashkent. So everyone knows Phuket and Singapore and Dubai. We all know that works. But these new destinations also work very well. So we're very encouraged by these successes.
Right. Peter, you just mentioned that the focus is both on domestic and international. Well, conventionally, IndiGo has this image of being the airline for its people of India, a low-cost airline that's serving tickets and prices at an affordable cost. Are we looking at a change of identity? Are you now trying and targeting to be a global airline? Because you'd mentioned that by 2030, you do see yourself as one of the eyes in the skies.
Yeah, well, we are building on what we are. We're expanding. We're not changing the fundamentals of the company. The three customer promises, affordable fares, courteous and hassle-free service, and on-time performance, were the very foundation of the success of IndiGo. And that will continue to be like that. And knowing India and knowing the Indian consumer, which is a very value-conscious consumer, we have to remain competitive. We have to keep our cost leadership. So that identity will remain the very same. And I would say our service is really one of the strong assets of IndiGo. So we continue to build on that. We continue to expand that. But the network itself, like India, I would say, is getting more and more connected to other parts of the world.
So you do realize that the priority lies with India?
Yeah, no, our customer basis today is very much India. Even though we fly international, the customer basis is India. But more and more, and I think there's still a great opportunity for the country, park IndiGo for a minute. The number of foreign visitors in India is very limited still. I think there's a great opportunity. Look at how many UNESCO world sites we have in India and how little visitors we have. So the opportunity to build on that and to bring also foreigners here, Indians abroad, but also foreigners here, I think there's a great opportunity out there to start building on that.
Peter, with the massive expansion plan and the aircraft order you have put, which also includes the wide body and which we're looking to foray into the international, get on the international map. So how do you think that expansion happening, let's say, next 5 years?
The way I'd like to almost visualize it, if you wish, is India is the center, it's the heart for where we are, is who we are, and that won't change. But we start to expand gradually. The first flights IndiGo did about a decade ago international were classically to the Gulf, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia. That was the first step. Second step, I guess, was Southeast Asia, Bangkok, Malaysia, Singapore. That was the next step. What we have done recently is basically expanded up to the north, Central Asia, expanded to the west, where we started flights in Nairobi, expanded to the east when we start flights to Indonesia. So we start to expand from India. The opportunity we have now is first to get the XLR, which will bring us into parts of Europe, Geneva, Athens, all these places where I think there's huge opportunity. And then surely with the 350, the next opportunity will be there. And basically we can reach pretty much any point in the world from India with the 350. And if you think about it, the further you go from India, the lower the market share of airlines from India is. So the opportunity out there, Europe, 70% is operated by European carriers. 30% only is operated by Indian airlines. So the opportunity for us to serve those markets, to offer a product which is great service, cost competitive, and Indian originated, I think it's a great opportunity.
Are we on track with the XLR, Pieter?
Yeah, we are.
And the A350 order?
Well, the 350 will come in 27 only. That was when we ordered it was 27. We are actually, as I phrase it sometimes, India is in a hurry, and so is IndiGo. So 27 clearly is something which we would like to accelerate, and therefore we're at this very moment engaging with providers for temporary capacity to already address the market now. Because we don't want to wait till 27, we would like to actually to move already now.
You did talk about the 30% share, for example, that has increased for a foreign destination like Europe, and IndiGo has also expressed great interest now to take flyers to Europe, and you already have existing code shares, which is doing wonderfully well for the travelers, but now you're looking to strike a direct destination balance with that.
Yeah.
When is the starting date for this? Do you have a timeline in mind?
I have a timeline in mind. I would always like to have a plan. But maybe just before going there, we started the code shares with Turkish Airlines in 23. And why did we do it? Because my observation was IndiGo is a very well-known and very well respected brand in India itself. Everyone knows IndiGo, and wherever I go, even with the logo, IndiGo. So people know IndiGo, and all the first-time flyers, IndiGo is well known. That wasn't the case so much outside India, leave alone in Europe. When I joined IndiGo in 22, I got a lot of people, where are you going? IndiGo, what is it? And already at that time, it was a big airline. It was not like a small startup airline. It was a big airline, not the 100 million we have today, but a big airline. So the code shares really has helped us to start to create a market position in Europe, in Australia, in different parts of the world. So we start to get that market share. And actually this weekend I was talking to someone, said, hey, I was in Finland, I saw on the signs at the airport, I saw IndiGo code share flight. I said, that's exactly what we need. Because there's going to be a moment in time when IndiGo will start to fly directly into Helsinki. So we are really building that, and the XLR is expected somewhere in the next financial year. And with that arrival, and whether it's a few months earlier or later is another discussion, with that arrival we'll start to build on that.
So Europe is not far for us to fly by IndiGo. That's very soon.
It's very important, and as I said, we are looking to get some temporary bridging capacity. And I say it jokingly, India is in a hurry and so is IndiGo, but in fact it's the reality, right? The country is driving forward. Every new flight we put in, we see people signing up and really they want to go.
But you've at least a couple of recent aircrafts in order to make it comfortable and create that temporary bridging. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. So we have a couple of damp leases in the country itself that is addressing some of the AOG situations we're having. And we have now taken a step for one plane, and we're looking to expand it to more planes in order to address that long-haul market before the 350 is arriving.
Pieter, you mentioned like your USP for people to come to you, other three things. But how do you look to maintain the operational excellence as you expand, like increase fly or expand your wings? So what are those things that you are looking to maintain?
Yeah, it's a very important point, and thank you for bringing that up. One of the core fundamentals of IndiGo is operational excellence in an environment which is not always easy in terms of airport, airspace, weather. Some of the monsoon time, some of the floodings we had in Chennai, some of the fog in Delhi. So India, with all its diversity, has some weather challenges we have to deal with. Despite that, we've put a lot of efforts, and I'm very proud actually what the team did, that as per this winter, so actually November last year, we are back to the leading position, October already, we're back to the leading position when it comes to on-time performance. So the operational procedures and operational rigor and discipline is a very fundamental part of IndiGo. Going forward, I think the next step is digitization. We do a lot of processes where we still have a lot of manual interventions. the whole world comes to India to digitize its processes. We live here, this is home, so we should have the opportunity to digitize on that part.
Okay. Pieter, how has the stretch been performing so far for you in terms of revenue output?
Very well. I mean, we started in November last year, the middle of November. You may have seen we welcomed the plane at Diwali itself. It was really our Diwali gift to the nation, so to speak. So it was really very nice. A coincidence, of course, but very nice for us and very well received by the customers. So we started on Delhi, Mumbai. Today we operate 40 sectors between Delhi and Mumbai. All of them are now with the stretch plane. We started in the first half of Jan to add Delhi into Bangalore. We will start Delhi, Chennai soon. And the reception and the response from the customers has been very supportive. So it's 12 seats per flight. We have quite a few flights which are being sold out. Clearly, when you have 20 flights, it's easy to sell the 8 o'clock in the morning flights. The 3 o'clock in the nights are a bit of a different story. But even on those flights in the night, we see actually very good response.
Great. With the introduction of stretch and of course a couple of other things that you have announced and the 350s, clearly we are hinting at a greater international expansion plan for you. And that brings me to the question of competition. Competition in India with Air India, the Maharaja now, with its merger partner, Vistara is also quite trying to tackle, while they're looking more at the domestic aspects, which is your strength, Pieter. IndiGo is looking more at the international aspect. Are we looking at this duopoly going further?
The way I look at it is let me take a step back. You know, how many big airlines or airline groups are there in Europe? 5, 6. How many big airline groups are there in the US? 5, 6. China. So the fact that we have multiple larger airlines or larger airline groups is very much in line with what's happening in other parts of the world. So the Indian aviation, if we park IndiGo for a second, the Indian aviation landscape is going through a very similar phase as what's happened in other parts of the world. Airlines are disappearing, consolidation is taking place, and at the end of the day, we get airlines of a certain size and scale. That's one. 2, if we want to compete with the likes of the big aviation giants in China, in Europe, in the US, we should have a certain size and scale. So again, leave alone that I'm representing IndiGo here. But if, as India, we want to compete with airlines from other parts of the world, we should have airlines of a size and scale in order to be able to compete. So what's happening in India today is very much in line with what happened in other parts of the world. It will create airlines which are able in size and scale to do that competition. And then, yes, of course, we'll compete with Air India. And that's good. That keeps us on our toes. It keeps them on their toes. And there's going to be a couple of other airlines sort of trying to get their share of the pie. And that's perfectly fine.
Which is great because you're hinting at India's aviation story. And I have been wanting to ask you, just a while back, we were having a chat off camera and you said it's India's IndiGo that is now flying heights. The sector has been grappling with some challenges. Despite that fact, you have shown a strong faith in Indian aviation sector. What do you think keeps it going?
You know, I would say India is going through a phase in its history, and I say that in all sort of modesty and where consumer spending, the growth of the nation, economic growth is becoming of a, again, for the lack of a better word, an unstoppable trajectory where an economic growth and dimension and consumer spending is being unleashed, and that is driving a lot of requests for mobility. You know, it's globally, economic growth leads to growth in mobility. So whatever is happening with roads and trains and ships and planes is all part of that same drive for mobility. So that's one. And then the second part is if consumers have more money to spend, they'd like to sort of to put it into travel. And I think the opportunity for India, and that's why I'm such a big believer in the future of Indian aviation, is there are still millions and millions and millions of potential first-time flyers. You know, how many people we have by train? 7 billion, 8 billion. You know, looking a bit at the statistics, 1% move to planes is a big number already. So the number of people still moving from other modalities into aviation, and then those who are in aviation flying more often, flying further, flying international, I think that opportunity is out there. And last number, take it as a proof point. Today we have around 800 planes in operation in India. 800 planes in India. There's 3,500 planes in China. That's the same population. Admittedly, the landmass in China is different than the landmass in India, but still, and the GDP is different. So the potential is enormous. And against that backdrop, I think IndiGo has done the right thing by timely putting out these fleet orders, giving us a line of sight for the next decade for planes to come in.
Oh, great, Peter. Like you mentioned that there's a big potential. So this budget, the government has also announced a modified UDAN scheme. And I think IndiGo was one of the biggest beneficiaries of the previous one. But there have been some stumbling blocks like financial sustainability or occupancy. So what do you think needs to be worked out in the new scheme for more people to fly and more smaller cities to be touched by airlines?
You know, my view there was the UDAN scheme has been a very, very effective mechanism to let people have the experience of flying and kickstart connectivity into smaller communities. And I could not be more pleased by flying into some of these smaller communities and actually see what aviation has done. And I just shared earlier with you a couple of examples, places like Durgapur or Vijayawada, and suddenly flights are there and look what's happening. Connectivity is there, people are there, investments are there. So that's a great thing. I think where India is today is this scheme has been extremely effective, and I would say really kudos to the design of the scheme and the government in executing it. Today we're probably at the point where, back to the earlier number, 87% of the Indian population is living within 100 kilometers of an IndiGo served airport, and IndiGo serves 90 airports. So that's 87% of the population. So 100 kilometers in aviation is next door. So I think the focus today would be in bigger airports and start to compete by creating larger hubs. And I think we have great examples to have all the changes taking place in Delhi. Very important, 2 new airports, second airport in Delhi, second airport in Mumbai. Both of them will open in 25. 25 is a big year for Indian aviation. And then we have all these smaller communities where airports are being expanded. New terminal in Lucknow. I know if you've been there, but compared to how the old terminal in Lucknow looks and how it is today. So I think the focus there is to make sure that all these smaller airports are being upgraded, that they can deal with weather circumstances, that when the fog season is there. So there's going to be a couple of more airports being built. But the focus really is make sure that we get the bigger airports and a total ecosystem which is able to cope with the growth numbers.
That's what I wanted to come back to that. When we are, government is making India some of the major cities aviation hubs. So what kind of infrastructure upgrade you're providing connectivity, but until and unless you don't have the infrastructure and the handling thing. So what kind of infrastructure upgrade do you look coming up or you expect to come up in next 5 years when we're looking at, let's say China or some of the major airports in West?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there, and India, to my view, is very well positioned to do that. One is, if I may call it hardware, just concrete, runways, gates, terminals, that's hardware. And a lot of investments are being done, and everywhere in the country building is going on. So that's hardware, and the new airports being built and the expansion of terminals, new Bangalore Terminal 2. So there's a good example. One is hardware. 2 is what I would call software. That's the people. We need to have people in the aviation sector. And again, India, I think, is very well positioned. Young population, ambitious population. 3 is a lot of policy sort of dimensions in order to start building on that. There's still a lot of regulatory framework which can help to elevate connectivity. If you arrive in India, digital entrance. Everything is digital in Dubai, everything is digital in Singapore, often made by Indian companies. So we should have that very same structure. Domestic, we have it. DigiYatra is there. International is the next step. I think 4, very important. We need to start building an ecosystem with airports, airlines, producers, manufacturers to lift the entire setting. And that's happening in places outside India, Middle East, Singapore, parts in China. I think now we have the opportunity to start building the same here in India.
Peter, you've been with KLM for many years. How difficult or easy or how challenging is it to do business in India?
Yeah, I was with KLM for
Peter, be careful.
I was with KLM for 30 years, the last 8 years as the CEO. And actually that experience shows that the potential and the opportunity for India is enormous. Because that's from a population perspective, a small country. Good GDP, but a small country. And yet having an airport with 70 million and an airline of 35, 40 million and a very efficient operation. Fast forward that to the potential we have in India with a huge population, an ambitious population, an airline which to my view has all the means and the drive and ambition to start growing. So yes, it has been a big change from a sort of single hub operation to a multiple hub operation, a size and the growth which is very different. And the part which I like a lot is, it's India by IndiGo. We operate all over the country. We're everywhere in the country. We are, to some extent, a reflection of the dynamics and the ambition and the drive India is seen today. And IndiGo is very much part of that. And to be able to be part of an organization like that and help to shape the future of that airline, I think it's incredible, inspiring experience.
Did you sometime get stuck? Oh God, I'm in a situation where I don't know how to get out of it.
No, that doesn't exist in India because then you have your jugaad and you'll find your way out. But of course things are different. But think about it. It's what India is doing now in a short time took a decade or so in other parts of the world. So things are not 100% sort of immediately there. But at the end of the day, looking what we have done, think about it. I joined IndiGo in 22. Prior to COVID, we had like 77, 78 million customers. Last year, 113. That is added the size of more than a reasonable airline. When I joined, we had 1,600 daily flights. Today, we have 2,200 daily flights, almost 2,300 daily flights. That's an addition of 800. That's the size of a very, very respectable European airline. So that was added in time. And we had the planes, and we have the people, and we have the infrastructure, and we have the operation, and we have the procedures. That's all done. So that sort of underlines for me what all can be done in India with the drive and I think the people in IndiGo are really fantastic. It's our strongest asset we have is the teams and the people we have, and that drives us to move forward, and that inspires me to start sort of further looking outside India in terms of further expansion.
Peter, I want to address the elephant in the room, which is the ongoing debate and challenge of giving more and more bilateral rights to Gulf carriers. And I think somewhere they're here the silent beneficiaries, while two big airlines in India are doing really well with their expansion and their strategy. What is IndiGo's view on this?
Our view is pretty straightforward. These bilaterals have been created in the past and were only used to a limited extent by Indian operators. And that means that the share of Indian operators in using those bilaterals was relatively limited for a host of reasons. And historically it was there, and that was history. I think over the past few years, with both the change at Air India and the change at IndiGo, we now start to use those traffic rights, and we see that the expansion is there. And it's not long ago, it's 8 years ago, that the share of Indian operators on international travel was only 35%. 65% was non-Indian. And as I said earlier, the further you go away from India, the lower that share is. So I think the opportunity was there to start using those traffic rights. There were a lot of unused traffic rights. Now we start to use these traffic rights. And so that's step one. Step two, I think it would require more like a tailor-made approach, country by country. It's a different, not all countries are the same. Not all overall economic relationship between the countries are the same, and bilaterals are often a reflection of that. And then sort of the government takes a cohesive point of view, taking the different inputs in doing that. So I think it's way too complicated to say a one size fits all should be like this or it should be like that. First of all, we needed to make sure that India has airlines in order to compete. I think slowly we're getting there, both our competitor and ourselves. Secondly, would be a tailor-made approach for different countries. And then the government takes into account all the different dynamics for the countries involved.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of opportunities. I think you mentioned one. We've added a lot of capacity to Abu Dhabi over the past 12 months. So there was still plenty of room available.
Great. Your competitor has also shared and been vocal about it that one of the ways to make India as a global aviation hub is to try and attract the connecting traffic and make them more well-versed with the Indian airlines. Do you have a similar view?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, whether you're Air India or IndiGo, the geographical position of India is the same, right? So 65% of the world population lives within a 5 to 6 hour radius from India. So the opportunity to connect in India is massive. And there's quite a few flows from Africa to Southeast Asia where the quickest way is to connect in India. In this case, more Bangalore and Hyderabad, but that's the quickest way to connect. So I think the opportunity to start attracting that travel is absolutely there. For that, back to your earlier question, we need to have the infrastructure. We need to have hubs equipped to do that connectivity. We need to have transfer facilities. We need to have immigration procedures. We need to have... So, again, if I see what's happening on those parts, in hardware, in software, and in policy framework, it's actually moving very, very rapidly. And a lot of countries outside India have used sort of the absence of having hubs in India to build up their own hubs. That's fine, that's international competition. But I think the opportunity for India and IndiGo to start building that is absolutely there. And we see good examples. You know, if you would have asked some people a few years back, would IndiGo be able to connect people from Baku to Phuket via Delhi? I said, no, it won't happen. Well, today it's a reality. So I think there's plenty of these examples.
There's a small connecting question to this. For any airlines, it's the crew or the people who are the face of that airline. And with massive expansion plan, how IndiGo is preparing itself for that kind of workforce, pilots, crew, and their training. If you could just brief us briefly.
Well, you're sitting right now in the very heart of that. So this is where the culture of IndiGo is being cultivated, where it's being kept, where people are being trained. Here we train 2,000 people a day. Cabin crew, ground staff, technicians. So all different type of trainings are being done here. And that really helps us to cultivate the culture, to cultivate the IndiGo spirit, and indeed for our customer facing staff. And I took a couple of flights again this weekend, and it's every time I'm flying, I'm impressed by the job they are doing under full flights, running around, getting everyone in, out, and yet give a very good service. I think they do just a wonderful job, both on the ground and in the air. And we train that right here by ourselves.
Peter, as we come to the end of this interview, I must ask this to you, that you have often spoken about your deep connection with India. You've in fact also called it Ghar. You have been to Mahakumbh recently. I've seen you do Bhangra. I have seen you participate in various Indian cultural events. Tell me something interesting that you have picked up from India that is going to stay with you, a phrase or a word. I have learned Jugadu, but...
Yeah, that was the first word. That cannot be missed, right? But I'm not sure if there's just one word. I think India is way too complex to have it all summarized in one word. But diversity and people, I guess, comes closest. And the diversity of festivals, and you've just mentioned one. And the fact that at the end of the day, it all works out. There's always a challenge. But at the end of the day, people are committed to make it work. A smile brings you a long way. This optimism of the country and optimism of the people is I think it's very, for me, it works very contagious. So wherever I go, I find that optimism and drive. And with that, to participate in the events and feeling at home and to the extent possible part of it, that really is very nice. And India has been very hospitable to me. I felt welcomed initially in the company itself, and now in sort of broader setting in India as well.
And as the IndiGo's main man, certainly this has helped you understand the Indian traveler better.
Of course, yeah. No, I mean, but it's more than just a functional understanding, right? You can sit at the office and read, and you can have PowerPoints and presentations and all. But the best way to do it is to travel and to be at airports and to sit and to see what's happening and to talk to customers and people and just observe. And then to see sort of the rush at the airports and see the people going and the dimensions. And I've become more late booking myself. Every European gets nervous if his holiday is not booked 6 months prior. In India, 6 days prior, we start to sort of prepare, and then it works. So you start to adjust your own style to it, and it works actually.
Thinking like an Indian. Indians love hot meals, Pieter. Is that on cards for IndiGo?
When we will start to fly further, it's probably it's a consideration we will take. But and I know you're referring to our stretch product there. Indians like a hot meal, but also Indians like a good bargain.
Absolutely.
So I think both of them are sort of competing with each other all the time. And there are so many places where you can find a proper hot meal and a good hot meal outside an aircraft, rather than bringing it to 30,000 feet for a 2-hour flight, and just get it on the ground, either in the airport or on the street or close by. And if you have a chole bhature here for 90 rupees,
price sensitive also.
We cannot make it for that price on board of the aircraft, right? So what we have done, more seriously, what we have done for Stretch is looked what is really important for our customers. And yes, hot meal is important, but what's more important is the privacy, the seat, the process, the way the service is being done. So that has been really important. So we decided to work with Indian brands, in this case, the Oberoi Flight Kitchen, which is a great company. So we want to work with Indian brands, build on that Indian image, and making sure that we get good meals to the palate of our Indian consumers, high quality and healthy ones. So those are, I think, the steps we try to do.
Great. Thank you very much, Pieter, for speaking with us and joining us on this conversation. It's been quite a pleasure, and we wish you great luck with all that IndiGo is planning for India's aviation sector.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pieter.
Thank you.